Amanda Brookover with her interpretation of the Tom Snyder and Deborah Tannen parts.
Not only what we say, but how we say it. And lately, it seems, we as a nation and as a people have become more argumentative than ever before. Shows like Crossfire and even Jerry Springer have moved conversation from dialogue to debate. Deborah Tannen argues for a move back to civil disclosure or discourse in her new book, which is called The Argument Culture. And it's a pleasure to welcome Deborah Tannen to our program. Thanks for joining us tonight. Let me ask you here about the role of television in moving from dialogue to confrontation. What role has the boob tube played in this?
Oh, television has played a very large part. There's an idea that the news or any other show has to be entertainment, and then a belief that conflict is the best entertainment. So everything is turned into a fight. If there's an issue to discuss, you get two people with the most polarized views possible and let them slug it out. We use war metaphors to discuss just about anything.
Yeah, we're good at putting out heat, but not very good at putting out light in some of these controversial issues.
Yeah, I mean, the danger with always having the polarized views is that most people are somewhere in the middle. But
yeah, we're a centrist nation.
That's right, and you don't see that, and then it actually affects how people relate to each other. They see this, they see the model of approaching everybody as your enemy, and then you get road rage and all kinds of other, I have a business proposition, or I have talked to somebody on the phone, and you realize how much more often now people will be treating you as an adversary.
Now, in putting together the book that you have here tonight, The Argument Culture, I read that you studied conversations, you taped conversations, and you studied them. How do you do that? I mean, you tape people, and where are they having these conversations, and what are they talking about?
I am a sociolinguist.
Okay.
I tape record conversations that I just happen to be part of. I wrote a book
Well,
called...
so do I.
Here we are right now.
Right. I'm tape recording your conversation tonight.
I'm studying
it.
I wrote a book called Talking from 9 to 5 about the workplace. I had people just take tape recorders with them as they went about their business, and then I studied the transcript. I've studied dinner table conversations, conversations among husbands and wives, partners, gay partners.
And you were on the up and up. Everybody knew they were being taped, right?
People always know that they're being taped. I don't believe in taping people without letting them know.
And what did you find out about conversation after listening to all these tapes? Was it styles of conversations, method of conversation, direct conversation, indirect?
We often think in terms of psychology. So my mission as a sociolinguist is to point out how you speak can often affect what goes on in that conversation. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
A husband and wife. The wife told me, she says, my husband doesn't think I can tell a story myself. We go out somewhere, I start telling a story, and he starts trying to tell it for me. He's taking it over from me, and it's such a sign of disrespect to me. And I said, well, that could be the case, but he may have a conversational style. Maybe it's from the East Coast, maybe certain ethnic background, where he believes this is a way of showing that I'm on your side.
I'm being supportive.
I'm being supportive,
Okay.
and it's kind of like it's a conversational duet. Together we're going to play the same song. And I said, you really have to think about conversational style to understand how he means it before you draw the conclusion.
And did she understand what you were
Well, she did.
saying?
Yeah, she did, especially when I said, well, maybe it's because he's from the East Coast, East European background. She said, oh, my goodness, that's exactly what he is.
Now, you're from New York, right?
I am.
New York girl, okay?
That's right.
And I'm a California guy. I mean, I've lived here for most of my life, my adult life, although I spent 10 years in New York, which I love dearly.
And my husband's from California, so I know about the New York,
Well, now, in your household, the New York and versus California conversation, how do they differ?
Well, in some ways, I have to say that my husband is not quite typical because he spent his first 8 years in New York. But typical thing that would happen between a Californian and a New Yorker, you, the Californian, gets the feeling that the New Yorker is interrupting you. And you start thinking, gee, you only want to hear yourself talk.
Right.
Because you're waiting for that nice long pause so that you know my turn is up and it's your turn to begin. But for me, that pause starts to feel uncomfortable. And I want to be a good conversationalist, so I'm going to fill in that conversational silence, keep the conversation going.
So you don't want any dead air, do you?
Well, New Yorkers, and not just New Yorkers. I mean, this
East
could
Coast,
be
right?
It could be East Coast. It could be could be French, German, people from parts of the world where conversation is fast-paced. Anytime there's a difference in a sense of pacing, the person waiting for the longer pause is going to get interrupted. Another thing, this was at a real conversation that took place at a Thanksgiving dinner. us is going to get interrupted. Another thing, this was at a real conversation that took place at a Thanksgiving dinner. I was the New Yorker, I admit, trying to have a conversation with someone who worked at Walt Disney here in Los Angeles. And I was trying to be friendly. So I asked a lot of questions. You from LA? What do you do there? You're a writer? You're an artist?
Yeah, just trying to,
Just trying to
get the conversation, break the ice, as it were, right?
But what happened was the opposite of what I expected, because it was the way I was saying it. See, the high pitch, the fast pacing, kind of clipped way of saying it.
It's almost
You
like
smell it?
you're machine gunning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He felt it as machine gun questions, and that's what I call it.
And was intimidated
machine gun
by it, right?
questions. Yeah, so he backed off and was kind of hesitant. He said, I work for Disney, like as if he didn't even know the place that he worked. And I thought I had asked more questions to make him relax. And the more questions I asked him,
shut up, and it probably would have answered you. You knew
no,
you
I
were
had
just
to say
going
we're
in.
still friends.
All right. I remember. Could you tell me where the Empire State Building is, or should I just go? Yeah. Well, not tonight. Soon, though. Yeah. Let's take a little break here in the festivities. Deborah Tannen is the guest. Her book is called The Argument Culture. When we come back, you on the toll-free as time permits, and more of that thing you love. Now these messages. Dusty on the toll-free in Toner, North Dakota. Hi, Dusty, and welcome to CBS Late Night.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, how does tone affect the conversation that you're having?
Big time.
In that example I gave before, that high-pitched tone, you smell it? Had one meaning to a person from the East Coast, which is, this is casual. You can answer if you feel like it. If you don't feel like it, you don't have to answer. It could be misinterpreted as disrespect, just trying to be so clipped that I'm not even taking the time to talk to you. And this happens in conversations between people, say, from the East and from the South. An example would be indirectness. The way that you ask somebody to do something, the tone is what lets you know that you want somebody to do something. Let me tell an example of a conversation. This took place between a husband and wife. They're driving along in the car, and the wife turns to the husband and says, "Are you thirsty? Would you like to stop for a drink?" And he wasn't thirsty, so he said no. Then it later turned out she was annoyed at him because she wanted to stop. And he thought, well, am I supposed to be a mind reader? And I said, no. She didn't expect a yes-no answer. Would you like to stop for a drink? She thought the answer would be something like, I don't know, how do you feel about it? And then he could say, well, I don't know, how do you
we're getting
feel
into this
about
area of great fascination, which is the men and women area. I know I ask the woman in my life often, I'll say, because I know that she's been out with pals for dinner to a restaurant, and I'll say, what did you have for dinner? And she'll say, well, the woman at the next table had on the most beautiful dress. I'm thinking, what are we talking about here? I said, what did you have for dinner was the question. Why is that so difficult?
My suspicion is that she didn't take it literally as I really need an answer to this specific question.
What could be more simple than what did you have for dinner?
Well, my guess is she's thinking, well, let's just have a free
Didn't you
flowing
write a book
conversation.
called You're Not Listening or something?
You just don't understand.
You just don't understand.
Women and men in conversation.
Yeah.
And the role of conversation is often different for women and for men. So for many women, you come home at the end of the day and you just tell everything that happened and what's on your mind and who you met, what that made you think, and it may be kind of free associating, which is why maybe your wife thought of the table and thought of what the person at the next table was wearing. And then she might turn to you and say, how was your day? And then the man might say something like, oh, same old rat race.
No, I'll just say, it was fine.
It was fine.
It was just fine.
And she feels, well, why
How could it not be fine?
She might, but you don't tell me anything.
Nothing to tell. It's the same old thing every day. I come in here, put the suit on, come down here, schlep the questions, get out of here and go home. Have a couple of drinks. It's the same every day.
But then you go out to dinner, and you're sitting at the dinner table with a whole group of people, and suddenly you tell this amusing story about what happened today. And she feels, well, what am I, chopped liver?
Excuse me. I don't go out to dinner. I sit in the conference room with no windows with the people I work with, and we watch Wheel of Fortune every night. That's my whole thing. You're not looking at Charlie Raconteur here. You're not looking at, this is not the Maurice Chevalier of the West Coast. You're looking at just dumb old Tom from Milwaukee who gets a kick out of doing TV programs.
You're not typical, but it happens.
I understand.
A lot, all across the country.
Dusty, I'm glad you called. Now, Dusty, I'm not trying to be nosy, but is there a man in your life?
Yes, I am happily married.
Very good. Do you and your husband sometimes have trouble conversing with each other?
Every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, just an innocent thing, you know, it happens.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another one that's really common
Okay.
between women and men, and I don't know, Dusty, if this happens to you, but it does with a lot of people, where the woman might start talking about problems. You know, well, something happened and this really bothered me. And if a man, and this will often happen, he will come in and tell her how to fix it. And often the woman feels, first of all, if you're telling me how to fix it, you're implying I can't fix my own problems. And that really, you know, it's a little bit of a put down. Also, she wants to really talk about it. And if you move in right away and tell me how to fix it, that cuts short the conversation. And the idea is to get the conversation going. So the role of conversation in keeping us close is really essential to women's friendships. And for many men, that really isn't so much the idea of friendship. It's more doing things together, loyalty. You know, if there's something wrong, I know he's going to be there.
You're right, though. Men don't talk amongst themselves as women do.
Not the same way.
No,
Not the
we
same way.
will go bowling together or play golf together or softball or handball
It's
or
the doing
basketball.
things
It's
together.
the doing
Right.
things together rather than being with the other person, the other guy, and talking with him about things.
Right. And often, and this gets back.
Mainly because we have so little to talk about. I mean,
Well, you might talk about computers. You might
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
true, that's
cars. You
true.
might talk about sports.
Well, there are some things we do talk about.
And this gets back to my new book, the argument culture, which is that often men will playfully argue, playfully put each other down, mock insults. In my work in the workplace, if a woman talked about another woman's clothing, it was usually a compliment. Oh, what a great blouse! You know, where did you get it? So you got your haircut, looks terrific. The man, it was kind of like, who'd you let chop up your hair?
Yeah, or did they have that suit in your size?
Yeah.
How's your diet coming? How much you trying to put on?
Or, you know, where'd you get that dye? Looks like your breakfast is still on it. You know, and so, and it can be a way of showing affection, but it's using opposition or kind of a playful fighting as a way of doing something that's not fighting. And that's, in a sense, when I talk about the argument culture, that's what I'm talking about, a kind of a ritual fighting that's more common among
Dusty, I'm
men.
glad you called. How many souls live in Towner, North Dakota, my friend?
How many people live in Towner?
Who are you asking me?
I'm asking my husband.
Oh,
650,
wow.
around there.
Wow, do they have any, like, stores there, or is it just...
Oh yeah, they have a store and little shops here and there.
Very, very good. And what is it near that the folks would know?
Minot,
Oh, sure.
Bismarck.
Oh, okay.
It's closer to Minot.
Okay. Dusty, I'm glad you called.
I was also going to tell you, if you ever need to feed your dog pills, put it in some peanut butter, because that's what my vet told me.
Well, my vet told me that too, Dusty, but my dog Oliver is one of the few that does not like peanut butter.
My dog will eat anything.
Well, not mine. Anyway, I'm glad you called. Have a great summer. I hope to talk to you again, okay?
You too, thanks.
Okay, we'll be right back and continue chatting here with Deborah Tannen, who is the author of a book called The Argument Culture. And you on the toll-free as time permits now, these messages. With Deborah Tannen, here is Marianne on the toll-free in Leamington, Ontario. Hi, Marianne. It's Tom, and you're on the air. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, how does eye contact and facial expressions, such as smiling a lot, affect conversation?
You know, you may expect me to say that eye contact is really important, but this is another thing that changes with conversational style. So there are some people who feel you really have to be looking at a person to show that you're listening. And then there are other people who actually won't be looking because they feel that if you really want to concentrate, you know, you have to look away so that you won't be distracted. And the important thing is to know the conversational style of the person you're talking to realize whether they're expecting that intent eye gaze to know that you're listening.
A lot of people, if you look at them all through a conversation, they
They
will
feel
feel like...
you're bearing in on them.
Or staring at
That's
them,
right.
so you try to look away for a second to get a little relief, as it were. What else, Marianne?
Oh, I just find this conversation very fascinating, and
Well, thank you.
just interested in like facial expression. I'm a very happy, smiley person, and I wondered how that affects conversation.
It helps it along many times, especially if there's a little lull now and again. A smile is a good idea. Well, here we are.
You might notice, by the way, that women do tend to smile more than men. And if women don't smile, it's not unusual for people to say, oh, cheer up, it's not so bad.
Right.
And think we're angry if we're not smiling. And men are less likely to have that expectation.
Marianne. Okay. Take care, young lady, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Oprah Winfrey, as you write, changed the face of talk television. You wrote this in a recent article in Time magazine.
That's right.
What did she bring to television that other talk show hosts did not?
Phil Donahue pioneered a new format of involving the audience.
You see what just happened? What did Oprah Winfrey bring to talk
I'm going
television?
to tell you what she added.
And you said, Phil Donahue.
Because she started with the material that she was given.
Right. Walking around with a microphone in
That's
the
right.
audience.
So she didn't pioneer that format. What she brought to it was involving the audience in a personal way. She made it confessional like friends. You know, I remember I said earlier that women tell each other things. That's what makes them close. Now, so many women feel that Oprah is their friend because she reveals things about herself. I really saw this after You Just Don't Understand was published. I was on both Phil Donahue and also on Oprah. And the producers for Donahue really tried to focus on the information. There were certain points they wanted to get out
Get
from the
points
book.
from the book, right?
And they would come out during the break and say, make sure you tell this one, make sure you tell that one. When I was on Oprah, first I was a little bit surprised that she wasn't getting that much information from me. And then I realized what she was doing was drawing out the studio audience, and she had invited couples on to talk about their own experience. And I realized they were really more at the point of her show than I was as the expert, although it was my book that had brought up the topic.
Right.
And that is something that I think really revolutionized talk television. It was the confessional aspect. Get real people up, have them talk about their lives, and Oprah has a real gift for empathy.
No question about it. I've seen her break out in tears when something happens on
That's
that
right.
program that
She
touches
is
her.
feeling it. And the first thing she did starting the show was telling me how something she read in my book captured something she had experienced in her life with Stedman. And just, you know, here's the reference to her boyfriend. Everybody in the audience knows who that is. But she brought herself into it, her own experience. And that creates that connection with the audience.
Do you know what else she does? She exposes her vulnerabilities.
That's right.
You know, and she's very frank about her failings and shortcomings as much as she touts her strengths. She's very honest about her shortcomings and where she feels vulnerable in her life.
And that is what I call troubles talk. That is so much part of women's friendships. I tell you my problems, you tell me yours. And again, I was contrasting that where sometimes a woman is frustrated when she's telling a problem to a man, thinking he's going to reply with his problem, and instead he replies with a solution. And Oprah isn't doing that. She's doing what women do. I understand because I have the same problem.
So what's the answer in 10 seconds or less?
Understand that there are conversational style differences, and sometimes the adversarial approach is not going to be the best one.
No, as a matter of fact, as my father always said in a conversation, never put your opponent in a position from which he or she cannot gracefully retreat. Deborah, I thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a joy. Thank you. Deborah Tandon is the guest. The book is called The Argument Culture. It's the one with the time bomb on the cover. We'll be right back, speaking of time bombs, to tell you about tomorrow night's show right after this break.